Paper Mache insects with Ms.Boley. So this is part 2 of a series of videos. So in part 1, we created a body of our insect, which we called the armature, which is the thing that holds up all the paper mache that we're going to add to it. And then we also have a video showing how to mix the paper mache paste. Make sure you've watched those 2 videos before you watch this video. So in this video, we're going to be adding the paper mache to the body that we built last video, the armature that we built the last video. So what will we need? We're gonna need some newspapers again. If you don't have newspaper, you can use some scrap paper from your recycling bin. Paper bags work well for this kind of thing. I've also used white paper, just regular computer paper, but it's probably best if you have some scrap paper to use that. I will be doing a layer of white paper at the end so that it makes my final piece easier to paint afterwards. You're going to need paper mache paste that you've mixed. In the previous video about mixing the paste, there's all the information that you need about what to do and how to make it and everything. You'll need some wax paper or aluminum foil, which is for placing your piece on when you're done so that it can dry without sticking onto the surface that it dries on. And then you'll need some cloth or paper towels to clean up. You might want to also cover, I do strongly suggest that you cover your workstation, your work area with some newspaper or a tablecloth that can be washed easily. You might want to get some clothes that you don't care if they get messy, because this is quite a messy activity. You may also need learning coach support, especially for like cleanup and setup and everything like that. Okay, let's get started. So I have my paste already mixed. Remember to watch the video showing how to mix it. I have some ripped up newspapers and I have my bug body, my armature that I built last time. So here's how we're gonna rip our paper. Start with a full sheet of paper, full piece of newspaper. I'm gonna do about 1 inch from the edge and I'm just gonna pinch it with my fingers and tear all the way down. So pinch and then tear all the way down. And you actually don't need a lot of strips of newspaper. This is definitely enough. Then I'm gonna rip it in half because it's quite long. So I'm gonna unfold it and rip it right in the middle. So that way I have a little bit shorter of strips. So this will definitely be way more than enough than I need. If you can't find newspapers, remember you can use just regular scrap paper or paper bag or something like that. All right, so here's how we start doing the paste. So I like to set up with my bowl of paste and then my newspaper strips with my piece over to the left where I'm going to be putting the strips onto. I like to keep it close by so I'm not dripping paste everywhere when I lift it out of the bowl. So I dipped it into the bowl and then I used my fingers to swipe off some of the extra paste. And then I wrapped it around. And when I wrap it around, it makes it stick better onto the piece. So dip it in and then use my fingers to swipe off. It's kind of hard to tell what I did with my fingers, but you're going to use them to swipe off and then wrap it around. And then I stick the side on and I kind of rub the paper so it doesn't have as many wrinkles. So I'm basically going to repeat that exact same process over and over until I have the whole thing covered. I might decide to wrap the paper in a different direction, but for now I'm just going to wrap around. So dip it, swipe it, wrap it. Okay, there. So I might speed up the video a little bit. And I will stop and pause if we need to explain or talk about anything else. All right, so I've done quite a few strips of paper. I've dipped them, I've swiped them, and I've wrapped them around, and I've covered the whole thing with one layer. Now I've found that I have lots and lots of wrinkles, and kind of my paper strips are a bit too wide and long now. So what I've done here, which was kind of difficult with my hands all sticky, but I've ripped up some small pieces of paper. So I've taken my strips and I've ripped them up and down, so I now have some small squares of paper, and I'm just going to stick those on. I'm going to dip them and swipe them and stick those onto some of the parts where some of the wrinkles are sticking up, and I'm wanting to make it a little bit more smooth. So paper mache is really wrinkly. It's a really wrinkly material, but I'm trying to smooth it as much as I can, because it makes it easier to paint afterwards if I don't have as many wrinkles. So some common problems that I have students often tell me about when they're working is that sometimes their art piece gets so soggy. They're like, oh my gosh, it's so soggy, it's starting to kind of come apart. So if that starts to happen, then that's your sign. If you're starting to notice, uh-oh, this is getting pretty soggy, that's your sign to just use less paste. Make sure you're swiping off the paste after you dip it in. And sometimes you'll see me right now, mine is getting a little soggy. I'm actually not dipping my pieces of paper in the paste because I have so much paste on my hands right now that when I place the paper on top of the sculpture and I smush it with my fingers, it smooths down really nicely and I don't even need to dip it in anymore. So if you're finding that your piece is getting really soggy, then use less paste. Stop dipping into the paste and just use what you already have on your hands and on your piece. Some other problems are that the paste is maybe, the paper is not really sticking onto the armature very well. So maybe you have a lot of tape or something like that is preventing your paper from sticking on. So in that case, I would just make sure that you're wrapping all the way around because the paper sticks really well to itself. So yeah, make sure that your strips are long enough to wrap all the way around the body. All right, so that's what I'm doing. I'm just using some smaller pieces to get rid of some of the super big wrinkles that I'm having. So now I'm gonna speed up the video again and we'll stop once I get to the next stage. So I've completed one layer of paper mache with newspaper, and I've done my best to smooth it out as smooth as I can. Now I'm going to do a layer of paper mache using just white computer paper. Any other kind of scrap paper that you have, if it has writing on it or if it has lines on it, that if it's not white, if it's a different like kind of off-white color or something, that definitely will work as well. I'm just doing this because when we paint our bugs, sometimes when we paint over top of the newspaper, all of the words and all of the newspaper pictures and patterns and everything shows through the paints. So we're going to avoid that happening by doing a layer of white paper. So I'm doing exactly the same type. I'm doing the same process. I'm doing a long strip, dipping it into the paste, swiping it, and wrapping it. But this time I'm doing a little bit different. I'm going up and down with my paper strips. But if you would rather do wrapping, like wrapping it around like we did with the newspaper, you can do that too. Basically, you're trying to cover the art piece. You're trying to cover it all with a white layer of paper mache paper. I've also ripped some smaller squares, just like I did with the newspaper. to kind of help get rid of the wrinkles. So yeah, that's what I'm gonna fast forward the video now, and I'll stop once I'm done this phase. All right, so we've got our bug body covered with white paper mache, and I'm just doing a little final smooth, trying to get some of those wrinkles out using my fingers in a smoothing motion. I'm also picking up my art and like rotating it and turning it and just checking to see if I've missed any areas or see if there's any parts that I might want to do some more smoothing to. So now I have to let this dry. It might take several days to dry. I placed mine outside so that it would dry a little bit more quickly. Okay, my hands are really messy, so I'm gonna go clean them, and then I'll come back and I'll show you how I would clean up my workspace. All right, I'm back, and I've brought a piece of wax paper with a baking tray underneath. Just something to put my art piece on. A piece of parchment paper or aluminum foil is great to let your art piece dry on top of so it doesn't stick. I'm gonna throw out my paste because if you leave it out, it might get moldy. You can save it if you put it in the fridge, but it will only last for a few days. We will not need it again, but you can save it. You may want it, and you'll see why in the next video. So I'm gonna recycle some of the paper, and I'm gonna keep some of the paper. And I'm just gonna use a wet cloth, a warm water wet cloth, to wipe up some of the paste from my surface. I didn't cover mine with newspaper. If you did cover yours with newspaper, then you can just gather up all the newspaper and throw it in the garbage. If you got some on your clothes, it should be washable, but you should throw your clothing in the wash right away. Don't let it dry, because if you do let it dry, it might kind of be hard to get out. So wipe up all of the stray paper mache drips that you can find, and you should be all good to go. Thanks for watching.